It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And welcome to the official Superhero Slate review of DC's Black Adam, the latest DC movie. Is it the only DC movie this year?
I don't know. It's really starting to feel like it. It's pretty thin out there.
We had Batman. I'm sorry. I was Batman doesn't feel like a DC movie. No offense, because it's like
you mean because it's successful?
It's successful. It's entertaining.
People liked
It's not connected to anything Zack Snyder's ever done. So it feels like a whole different movie. But yeah, so we did Black Adam finally, after 15 years, has finally hit the theaters. So
yeah, that whole narrative's been kind of bugging me in general. Because obviously The Rock has been out there using his network to kind of promote this movie, which makes a whole lot of sense. I don't look at the fine print, but I'm pretty sure that he's like an executive producer on this, making like a large portion of the box office. So he's a machine promoting it. But they're saying I've been wanting to do this character for 15 years. And it's just well, it would be a different story if there was a huge announcement 15 years ago that this movie was going to come out and it got canceled. And then I don't remember it.
In 2007, they did announce that they were making the paperwork had been signed or whatever. But it's one of those yeah, we know they've been making Fantastic Four movies every 10 years that they're not releasing too. So does this really matter at the end of the day?
Yeah,
kind of thing? But,
exactly. Yeah, I'm sure that there's fits and starts, but it's not exactly like how New Mutants was delayed 7 times.
Morbius, the most delayed movie known to man at this point.
Oh, Morbin time. But yeah, Black Adam, if you listen to the show regularly, our weekly news episodes, we have been, I would say, a little less than excited to make room to watch this film. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with Black Adam or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's got to be entirely just the state of the DC cinematic universe, right? They talk about fits and starts. It's basically the MO over there. Constant executive shakeups, hashtag campaigns. Yes, exactly. Media mergers. I mean, whether or not you think some of these movies cut a little bit deeper or a little bit more edgy than Marvel movies, it's safe to say that Marvel has been very, very consistent and undoubtedly much more successful by almost every metric than DC. So obviously preference does come into play. I'm sure some people can say, oh, I like this specific DC movie over this specific Marvel movie. That's great. But on the whole, if you're kind of into all of this superhero stuff, like me and Chris are, we've been talking about it every single week for almost 400 episodes. Yeah. Now, we start to get invested in it, maybe more than the average person. So I think all that goes to say, I got my tickets for a Saturday morning. I was I got to get this done and out of the way. I got other stuff I need to do in my day. Chris, you watched it a little bit in a different way because
I didn't buy
your
tickets.
Wife's birthday was this weekend, and you're just I'm not moving any of this to go watch Black Adam. So I'll explain to the audience how you ended up watching it.
Yeah, so well, there's just a cam version online because this movie's been out for about a week everywhere else, and it's not a bad quality version either, Mike. I don't know if you dove into it. Now, I would love to go pay to watch movies. Don't get me wrong, Mike. You know this. I love going to the movie theaters. There is nothing absolutely wrong with it, but it was just a horrible weekend for me to try to make this work. And if there's a copy out there, I'm gonna watch it. And if it's good, I'm gonna go put my money back into it. I also want to kind of go back to what you're saying here. Us being burnt out by DC, not necessarily on quantity, but quality, simply because I feel even if Marvel doesn't if they miss on stuff, right, I think you can agree they swing for everything, right? They're they try for diverse shows, diverse movies. You can usually get a different vibe from each one to each one. Unlike this movie, the trailers, the previews have looked pretty generic all around, right? Nothing original, nothing ooh, this is different from everything else I've ever seen in my life. And
yeah, you basically have a super powered hero in a suit, like punching things at its very basic entity. And I mean, we'll go into this spoiler free. I think we should just kind of roll into this. But Black Adam overall is just at its best mediocre, and mostly at its worst I hated it. There's some redeeming moments in the film, but overall I couldn't stop thinking about like The Rock's like selfie videos the whole time watching this movie. It's like, Dwayne, you promised me this was going to be good, and I'm having the worst time ever. There's this kind of weird moment, still no spoilers, where the second act is starting to wrap up, and weirdly the vibes coming from the film are, the movie's about done. We're almost wrapping up here. I almost thought I was going to be seeing credits roll, and I was like, is this a weird movie that only has 2 acts? What is happening here? This is really freaking me out. But then this other side of my brain was like, oh, the movie's almost done. Thank God, I want to get out of here. So then I was held hostage for 30 more minutes for a very generic third act. So it's just the characters, the acting. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the same person in every movie he's ever in, and I say that at risk of my own health because I slightly run the chance of running into him at some point in time.
And by that you mean he will run into you.
Yes, I reside in the same city. I doubt we're going to be in the same grocery aisle ever, but I don't know. He could see me at like LAX, and I don't know if he has like a team of sleuths that had an enemy list for him. He could pound me into the ground. But I just think he plays the exact same character in every movie I've ever seen him in. And in this one, he particularly takes on this affect of an emotionless robot. It's like, I get it. You are coming, from the past into the future, which I think is pretty heavily telegraphed into the trailers, right? So this man kind of out of time, but like it doesn't mean you'd be a robot, right? You can at least have a personality. It's not like you have just had amnesia and you don't know how society works, and you grew up in a cave or something. That's just kind of what it feels like. So yeah, overall, I just cannot find much to redeem from here, except I think I've seen this across the board for most people, is Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate is great. I think he is the only kind of anybody that's bringing anything interesting to any of these characters. Most of the time, everyone is just mad and punching things, but he brings just a little bit more nuance to it. And I loved his role. But beyond that, Chris, what did you think of Black Adam?
Generic is being nice, I think, a little bit about this movie. I was literally, one of the benefits of watching it from home, I'm able to text people who don't want to watch the movie while I'm watching it. And we were talking about this, how I'm literally essentially just taking notes through text messages. And more than likely, I kind of felt like Leonardo DiCaprio from the meme where he's pointing at the screen, right? Because like this is everything that they showed us. Every single thing has been done in another movie, whether it's DC or Marvel. There is nothing that is in this movie that makes it stand out and makes it make any difference. And I think to me that's just a huge miss, a swing and a miss for this, because I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think, there's a lot of interesting people with interesting powers in here sometimes. I agree, The Rock as Black Adam, he has the same grumpy look, frowny look on his face the entire time, right? He doesn't have any emotion other than he's like, I'm mad, I'm upset, whatever. The Justice Society, they just kind of show up and, they are very predictable. Everything in this is predictable. I saw it coming a mile away, and I don't know about you, Mike. Even the twist later on in the film, near the second act, I'm like, they telegraphed this very, very early on. Like, this is not a surprise for anybody, I feel. But I just felt, it's generic, but it's a combination of other movies that just did it better and did it better the first time. So I can't say I'm in love with it. But let's talk facts real fast before we jump into spoilers, because I think I want to, if you want to watch this movie, by all means go ahead, it's in the theaters. You should. I don't want to ruin it, but we should jump into spoilers because I think there's a lot to talk about. First and foremost, this has made almost 67 million, I think now is the updated number in North America, which is not bad. It's the biggest movie ever for The Rock that had The Rock in it, other than The Mummy Returns. So that's good for him. And he wasn't even in The Mummy Returns except for CGI Scorpion dude at the end there. It's made $140 million worldwide. That's pretty good for an opening weekend movie. I don't know how much this movie cost, so I can't say either way. Now, someone was running the numbers because this movie is very much they are paralleling it with the Shazam series in DC, right? For good reason. And they said that this has a 10% bigger audience than Shazam, adjusting ticket inflation prices, with 100% more production budget. So they don't know if, how much are they really winning, right, with this one.
I don't think 10% bigger than Shazam is much to say about. I mean, Zachary Levi is not really a household name outside of the show Chuck at the time when Shazam came out, a character that most people are not super familiar with. I don't think that one's a good bragging point.
No, exactly.
Even though I believe Shazam is a very good movie.
Yeah, well, and it's just kind of similarities with it, and I think honestly, Shazam didn't have any big names attached to it, right? Like this one has several, like you mentioned, Pierce Brosnan, The Rock, and all his other little sidekicks in this movie from the Justice Society. But yeah, and the last thing is a producer said today that recently Black Adam 2 was coming fast, so it sounds like there might be, some way to get this up and going. Maybe The Rock has some rights and he just wants to keep his franchise going because he doesn't really have a lot right now, right? He's out of the Fast and the Furious. Trying to think what other franchises he has. Anything?
I mean,
Terramana Tequila, the movie.
Is there? Well, there's going to be another. I'm sure there's going to be another Red Notice on Netflix.
Yeah.
I think we could assume that there's going to be a Jumanji trilogy. I would think that they would do at least one more with that concept. But yeah, who knows if he's going to be in that. But also I think it's important to note before we jump into spoilers that this is another one of those films where the audience and the critics are extremely divided. I don't know if Rotten Tomatoes is really the best way to judge the quality of a movie anymore, but if you go on over there, I think it's sitting at around 40 with the audience around like 80 to 90. So there's a really big gap there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have any listeners that totally disagree with us. And I don't know if I would even consider myself necessarily a critic. I'm just a dude with a microphone. So I don't know what camp you would kind of put us in. We're just fans saying how we feel.
Yeah. And that's totally, like I said, every opinion is valid when it comes to what movies you like. Cinema Score is giving it a B+, so, that's not horrible, right? That's pretty good. So, and I think I know why that is coming that way, Mike. And let's go ahead. We're gonna jump into spoilers right now. So if you've not watched this movie, go take a look. If you want to watch it, they come back and listen. So full spoiler warning here going forward. Everyone feels excited because they saw Henry Cavill for 5 fucking seconds, Mike. The rest of the movie means shit up until that point, right? Like if you looked at like a graph. Right, like it's like flatline, spike in the last 10 seconds of like dopamine. Like, oh my god, this is exciting, and then people are walking out and like that's what they're remembering. And like, oh, that was a good movie. It had Henry Cavill in it. It wasn't the movie. It was the last end credit scene that makes you feel that way.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're just kind of talking about maybe audience participation or reaction in a way, I feel like that's a good way to dive into. It feels like this film was punched up to death. Seems like somebody had created a very dour, serious film, and somebody decided we need to inject some humor and some quips into this, and every single one of them, except for maybe 2 or 3, fell totally flat in my theater. The only sort of reaction, I would say, comparable to like other just more successful films was the very end when people got to see Henry Cavill, and people were disproportionately excited about like, I don't think your post-credit scene should be the best part of your film. It needs to be the cherry on the top. You're there for the ice cream, right? So my audience was relatively tame, and it was pretty full, I would say, for a Saturday morning. Actually, we got a pretty full house, so people were going to see it opening weekend, which we're kind of seeing there in the box office numbers. But man, okay, let's dive into this movie a little bit.
Well,
I think what you were saying about how this just feels like so many other things that we've seen. And, you know, if you go back to the history of comic books, right, obviously Marvel and DC have been like copying off each other, you know, for decades and decades, making very similar characters like Dr. Fate and Doctor Strange, you know, and at this point in time, it doesn't matter which one was invented first in the comic book. At this point in time, at the way we are right now with media, it matters who makes it to the big screen and who makes an impact first. And almost everything in this movie has been done by Marvel very effectively already. We have a giant person already. It goes by the name of Ant-Man, right? We have our Doctor Strange / Doctor Fate. We have kind of this. We have kind of like these anti-heroes that have been dabbled with already. Even DC's already dabbled with the anti-hero stuff already. The whole time I was watching this movie, I also thought like, man, I'd rather just be rewatching Venom, right? At least Tom Hardy is injecting something into the character besides a stoic robot. And then the shoehorning of Amanda Waller in there. Like, why do they keep going back to the Amanda Waller well? I can only assume it's because James Gunn came in, made the Suicide Squad cool again, and made Amanda Waller relevant once again. That has to be the only reason she's still on a monitor somewhere telling somebody what to do. Yeah,
well, it's probably a very cheap thing to do. She's essentially, and I hate to say it, like, they're trying to make her the Nick Fury, right, of this. And, you know, it's fine, I guess, but like, you know, it does. I think it would have been fine to have her maybe at the end or the middle, but not both, right? I think one of the two parts, and then also James Gunn's wife was in this. I was like, oh, there's a Peacemaker reference right there. That was the weird part of the second act where I thought the movie was about to end. I was like, oh, is this the weird like kind of cliffhanger ending? And then we know we're going to be getting news on like Sunday afternoon that Black Adam 2's coming out in a year or something. No, that's not the case. We had to roll into the extremely generic fight with the devil at the end. So let me back up here. Let me go to the beginning, because I said literally less than 5 minutes in, this movie is the master of tell, don't show. Because literally there's a voiceover and this history thing. Nothing's really happening except someone's telling us, right? Kind of rather than showing us this history of Kondak, which is a mysterious, not real country that has a rare mineral only found there. Oh, what does that sound like out there, folks? Wakanda, and they have a singular protector of the country who happens to dress in a man in black, is what he calls himself. I was like, this is not helping me at all. And then, you know, I wrote this down. Oh, how many slow motion scenes do you think were in this? Do you think it's comparable to a Zack Snyder movie? They thought that shot where he's kind of destroying those fleet of soldiers when he first gets out of his prison, they thought that was going to be the coolest thing ever. They're like, oh, we're going to have our own kind of like Quicksilver scene here. It's going to be amazing. It's great. We're DC. We can do super speed. We got to show that Black Adam's fast, just like the Flash. This is going to be awesome. And of course, they set everything to like very on the nose, like classic rock songs, right? Like, and it was Paint It Black. It was Paint It Black. I'm pretty sure was the exactly. And they put all that work into it, and the whole time I just kept thinking, why did he have to go horizontally out through the mountain when they specifically show that there was a hole in the top of the mountain? Why didn't he just go up? That's why he just went sideways. He literally walked through every wall in this movie, Mike. He literally, for no reason. They didn't even explain why he walked through the walls. They're like, do you have doors? He was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. It's like, so you have joke for? Yeah, and it's just like, and the thing is, like, I understand the root and the structure of the joke, but he's just a mindless robot. If he was just kind of like a jerky dude the whole time and who just like didn't care about anything and was just like a chauvinistic type of person, like, oh, I get it. He just doesn't care about anything. He's gonna break up. He destroyed that woman's apartment. Like, she has no place to go back to. It is absolutely destroyed. I mean, the unfortunate thing is, like, the single best idea in this whole movie
is like the broad concept of like the colonization of a country for its minerals and oppressing the people, and why haven't these superheroes showed up before, right? I think that's a very important story that should be told, but like not like this. This was just, everything is like so heavy-handed, in your face. There's like no nuance to it. It's just so oblique. It's just like, I know it's a superhero movie. I know they're not going for the Oscar, but I mean, you can do a better job. Stop showing me this dumb kid on a skateboard. I hated that kid. I know I'm jumping around right now. It's all coming out. I hated that kid on the skateboard so much. He's the exact same character from Shazam. His I guess his stepbrother, adopted brother, who knows all the stuff about like nerdy superhero stuff. The exact same character, carbon copy. They just threw him in a different movie, and he has a skateboard this time around. I hated him. I hated that kid so much.
Yeah. Well, I've got another reference here. Early on, when you're talking about the mountain, right after the explosion scene, right, the slow motion, which is essentially pulled out of Justice League, where he's going faster than everything else in slow motion. Like that's what the Superman was doing. Whatever. A girl and her goofy sidekick find this lightning god in their van. They have. Yep. I was like, oh, that's Thor 1, isn't it? Like literally right there. And then we get thrown into the Justice Society, and we get Ant-Man because he's someone inheriting a size-changing suit from an older actor who is the Fonz, right? Henry Winkler himself is. I'm like, this is Ant-Man all over yet again. And then they have a magic man with a goatee and a butler, a lot of money. So he's a mixture of Doctor Strange and Iron Man, right? You've seen this. My notes go on forever here. Look, a literally indestructible metal, a jet made out of it, Black Panther, and an Under the Garden Fantasy Institute, like X-Men. I'm like, this is... It was just kept going. And I was like, oh my God, like, stop for a second. Do something new.
I was curious why they felt the need to say the jet was indestructible. Like, it was just a very strange line. Nothing has ever been indestructible in these superhero movies, except for the occasional superpowered person, right? Like, why do they need to tell me the jet's indestructible? It doesn't really come up at all. Actually, the jet gets, like, knocked into the ocean, and the front pod gets, like, dislodged later on in the movie. So, like, essentially it got destroyed. It might be in one piece, but it's not really serviceable anymore. So why is it there? And talking about when Black Adam gets like picked up a la Thor style in the van in the desert, why on earth did they set up these magical rockets very, very, very straight to the camera? Here's the little logo on the rocket to tell the entire audience we have magical weapons that can stop
it's Eternium.
Never
used it.
Never used again. Not one single time. And I feel like you could have just cut out that close-up shot. It felt like an insert. Take that out. We're not constantly wondering, like, I guess you'd have to explain. Really what they needed to do is they needed to get Black Adam into that apartment. They needed him to slow down for a second. And that's the only thing that they could come up with. It's just a very, very poor A to B solution that just makes me wonder the whole time. Because I was expecting like magical guns to show up at one point in time. I mean, they had the magical jets, those little speeder bikes, which kind of felt out of place. Like, I never really knew exactly what world I was inhabiting.
They were very futuristic for this very rundown country that has like hardly any. It looks like it doesn't have running water in half the buildings.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to get all geopolitical in this either, and I understand there are regimes and oppressive governments and countries out there that hire insurgents or militia members, right? But it's weird that the entirety of the bad guys are all guns for hire. They're just like kind of all of these abstract foreigners. Well, where's the lead? Who's the head?
The devil's the lead of this.
And then we get the twist, and it's just like, well, but he had to be a secret enemy though, because he had to get in that woman's crew at the beginning to find the crown. So like he was just a secret bad guy at the tip of the spear that nobody ever knew.
He was funding all of these militia members who knew he was there, right? Like everyone does what he said. So like that really doesn't track based on like whenever they got pulled over earlier in the movie, right? And they're sitting in the van and the guy's harassing them about their passport or their whatever, their papers, and
yeah,
he's like sitting right there in the front. I'm like,
yeah, it's like let him through. I mean, like
know who your boss is, right? He's right there. Like, play stupid, but regardless, I 100% get what you're saying. The twist in this, right? It comes to find out that literally his son originally was the first, Shazam, right? One of the original Shazams, and then you kind of find like, oh, he's not. The Rock wasn't granted the powers. His son gave him the powers to save him, and then was killed. Which, literally the intro had The Rock as his dad. Like, I'm like, he's right there. Like,
yeah, we could all hear them. Of course, his back was turned, but like, okay, well, here's a bald guy that
a very
sounds
large
a
bald
lot
guy.
like Dwayne Johnson. I get it, but also from a technical point of view, right? We are tethering this movie directly to the first Shazam movie, right? You got the same wizard. You got very, very similar costumes, right? I even saw the trailer for Shazam 2 in front of this movie. So, like, I was very primed to connect it to that universe. And the one thing I know about it, at least cinematically, I'm sure it's different in the comic books or maybe similar, is Zachary Levi gave his family powers and he didn't lose his. They all turned into the Shazamly and they all kicked ass. So why in this flashback does the son give the powers to his father, but then he reverts just coincidentally long enough to get shot with an arrow? Couldn't Black Adam just right then, that very second, like transfer it back to his son? It just didn't make sense why he lost it. It's another example of just like, oh, well, we just need to manufacture a situation where the son dies so he can like freak out and destroy everything.
Yeah. So it can show that Black Adam was never the hero. That's why he can kill people, as well as like, we get it. Like, we understand. But, like, this is very convenient for this.
Yeah, and they almost didn't even need it. I mean, I guess you need to have, like, a very trauma-inducing backstory, right? But they were an oppressed slave people, right? You don't need to add any extra steps. You give, like, this slave who's been toiling away, like, under the sun for, who knows, years, decades, mining a mineral and is abused every day. And then, give him superpowers. He of course he's going to go crazy and destroy everything. You don't need to add this extra like level to it.
Well, he also, I think the Rock really has, like, there was no motivation for him to become a good person. He just had to liberate everyone. Like, the motivation was like, do what the Justice Society says, and they were like, he's like, at the end he was like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Like, there was no resolution for that. The Justice Society, what a goofy group of fucking people.
Not only goofy, just entirely unearned.
Yeah.
Like, this just seems to be the marching orders for DC of just like, don't build up backstories to anything. We'll throw whatever we need to in a movie with nothing. And it really harms it in a way of, even when you're having like these solid performances from Hawkman or above and beyond performances from Pierce Brosnan, right? They have to telegraph this whole backstory that we never got to see. Like, oh, they're best friends, apparently, and like they'll do anything to save each other, and we're supposed to feel emotionally impacted when Dr. Fate sacrifices himself.
Right.
I just met this guy like 40 minutes ago. I don't care if he died. I don't know anything about him. And he's very old, and he's very mystic too. So how am I just supposed to assume that like he can't be brought back by magic? I'm not saying that's what you do. I'm not saying Pierce Brosnan has to be like brought back in for more or whatever. But
he's a standout. I mean, I'll give him that. Despite his short tenure, he was a standout part of this.
It's just like we just don't know anything about these characters, like what their motivations are. Like, since I don't know much about the DC Comics lore, like I don't entirely know what the Justice Society is. Like, is it an offshoot of the Justice League? Are these supposed to be more of like the bad boys of the Justice League? Where is the Justice League? Why is Amanda Waller involved? I thought she was the Suicide Squad leader. I thought she was the one they bring in when, nobody else can touch these like specific things. But this seemed pretty straightforward of like, we got a god like going crazy. This seems like we should get the Justice League over here,
Yeah, well, the other thing is because they went with the I guess the regular Hawkman Carter Hall, right? But I'm pretty sure if I look up his abilities, he has the ability to when he dies, he comes back, he's like reborn. So I thought maybe they would kill him and have him be reborn, right? Like oh, that's part of my shtick, right? Like of course. So I've got to look up some of this later, but yeah, like he's resurrected and stuff like that. I'm like
yeah.
So like they totally pull the rug out from what I did know of the characters. And I'm like that's kind of weird, but at the same time, I think your funny man, your comedian in a large suit is weird. I totally forgot the chick is in here, Cyclone. Like no offense to her, I just think they wrote her character poorly. She didn't do much.
Yeah, she didn't do much. Everyone on the team kind of got a little bit of an archetype, right? Atom Smasher got to be the dumb, funny one who had pretty much the only humorous lines that kind of worked. Dr. Fate got to be the one that saw the future, was like the cunning,
very morbid,
smart one.
Yeah, very morbid character too.
Hawkman was the leader, the brash one, and then was it Crimson? No, I'm thinking of
it's Cyclone, isn't it?
Cyclone, that's right. I'm thinking of the red. I keep thinking of the red robot that also makes a twister. But yeah, she just didn't really get. I mean, she was kind of supposed to be like maybe the smart hackery one. I think that's what they said when Amanda Waller was asking, "Oh, who's your roster?" So I thought maybe that would come up. And this was another weird thing, right? So
another weird thing. Put it down, folks. Another weird thing.
A lot of these decisions, I'm sure, probably were made in the comic book origins, but I don't know a lot about them, right? So I don't know much about this fictionalized city that this whole movie takes place in. But if we're going to spend the entire movie in one location, why is it dirt and brown and tan and overcast like the entire time? What an unappealing location to put your entire film in. And like I want to be clear, I'm not saying like cities like this don't exist on the earth and don't have value and don't have merit, right? But like if you're making something cinematic on the screen, like you don't like if that's going to be like your main point and that's going to be your city, like at least when they did like parts where they like flash to where like the wizards live, or they did like that quick cutaway to where Sabak gets his powers. Oh, we got to go to hell, so that was cool. We're seeing like these different tonal shifts, and luckily at one point in time we got to go to that kind of fancy underground prison or underwater prison. It was kind of neat, but just most of the time we were just in unappealing, boring deserts the whole time, and that's just a decision that has nothing to do with like budgeting or location. Like you could make that anything, like even very arid climates around the world have foliage at some point in time. And there was one brief shot where after kind of the magic motorbike scene, when Black Adam like throws a guy off into the horizon or whatever, there is a little bit more greenery like around there. So they tried at least to vary it up a little bit, but just a very unappealing location to just hang out in, as opposed to like, when you go to like at least the current Marvel equivalent, right? You go to Wakanda and like, wow, what a lush, interesting environment, right? There's just so much going on there. Like,
a lot of culture, even.
I want to explore it. Like, I don't really want to explore this city. And it seemed like Black Adam really didn't care either, because he destroyed that place while he was trying to fight the Justice Society. He was, like you said, just walking through walls, destroying whatever in his way. He just didn't really seem to care much about the people or the location until the story told him he needed to.
Yeah. Well, and then I think that's going to get us to the last point here, Mike. The big villain Sabak is the devil. Like essentially what a devil Shazam, I think is kind of what he is. Attributed to, and he just has to sit on a throne for the random skeletons to pop out of the ground.
And then we get a delicious sky beam, because we still need those, right?
Sky beam, and then the kid on the skateboard has to go rally the locals, because there's no locals in this very busy city, right? Who are going to be popping around. He has to go like rally them and slowly ride in on his skateboard back. Mike, I'm sure you love that moment where he's just leading the villagers back slowly on his skateboard. Like they're walking. I'm like, could you move a little faster? There are bloodthirsty villains here who want to kill your mom and uncle.
Like, who thought it was a good idea for him to go down like 7 flights of stairs and then, I need to go 7 feet. I'm going to get on my skateboard just to get off of it again, to go down steps. Those are the types of things that you see in like a Disney Channel original movie where like the character is like a skateboarder and he's glued to it and he loves it. And like his parents don't want him to be a skateboarder. They want him to do his homework. Like, no, this is me. This is my personality. I'm going to go win the big skateboard race. Like, I think I'm just literally talking about Brink now, but with skateboard. That's the type of thing you do where you like the whole character's life is a skateboard. Like this kid should be more worried about like dying than anything. Than he's just obsessed with this skateboard.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just I see kind of the parallel with him to Shazam, but what I really noticed in this movie, and I think you got nailed on the head, there's a bunch of filler shots everywhere, right? There's just things that don't need to be there just to have them in here. I think to make it longer and feel like a real movie. I mean, there's like that shot, like most of it is actually when they battle Sabak, or like they keep going back to that throne room over and over again, like back and forth, or the heroes do the slow motion walk up and they all acknowledge each other for like 5 minutes, and you're like, dude, just get on with the goddamn story. Like, I am tired of watching you people walk over rubble and just like silently nod at each other because there's some sort of mutual understanding going on.
Yeah. Everybody just spoke in platitudes and waxed poetically. Everyone's just talking about, you're a hero, you're a villain, this is what we need to do.
And we're going to fight because we don't know how to solve our issues any other way.
Yeah, you are going to work together to get back my son. It's just nobody spoke like a real person. It was just I just can't. Yeah. I just can't. It feels like if everything was going the way things were supposed to over at that studio 2 years ago, right? We would have had a Justice Society movie. And maybe it would have been good and we would have liked it. And when we would have saw these characters pop up in Black Adam, we'd be like, oh, it's so fun to see these characters again. Oh, no, our beloved Dr. Fate actually dies in this story. But since we know more about Dr. Fate, we're more familiar with that magical helmet and like, oh, it's going to choose a new person. And that person has already been telegraphed maybe on like an HBO Max show or something like that. There's just more to pull from. It gets you more excited. Then all the stuff would distract me from the absolutely nothing Dwayne Johnson is giving me, right? I could look past some of these more things, but there's nothing to hang my hat on. I just don't care.
And I think one of the biggest travesties of this is simply because it is a direct relation to Shazam. The same wizards, the same magic, the same powers, right? He even says the same goddamn word to depower himself. And did you notice they gave him the Captain America treatment when he depowered himself? They CGI'd him skinnier.
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson gets to join the Chris Evans fan club of
smaller
people
bodies.
So buff they had to debuff them.
Yeah, but like, there's this whole Shazam movie already, right? The only thing out there that would have made sense to tie this to and have more about, or even have the post-credit scene, because that Shazam wizard's still out there, right? We know he's out there from the movies. Zachary Levi showing up would have been probably way cooler, right? And more relevant to the story. Probably not as cool as seeing Henry Cavill. We all love Henry Cavill, Superman, obviously. But like, tie it back to the story. Other than that, it just feels like a piece you're going to see on YouTube, which leaked literally 2 weeks ago for me. Because The Rock is telling everybody about this moment, because if you watch that moment, you feel good about the movie, and everything else before it is just meh. You don't care.
Yeah, I saw an opinion out there online where just Dwayne The Rock Johnson, maybe rightly so, perceives himself as like the most, successful, well-paid, highest-profile actor out there on the planet right now, and he just doesn't want to play second fiddle to Zachary Levi. I'm not saying that there's beef there, right? But Shazam was a good movie, but it wasn't gigantic, right? If The Rock is going to be cameoing or teaming up or, facing another character, he's like, I don't I don't care about Shazam. Nobody talks about Shazam. I want to fight Superman. That's all I care about. I don't care if everything in this movie, my iconic chess piece or even my origin has to do with Shazam. I want to fight Superman. It's just like, it's so short-sighted. It wouldn't be so much better if he was like in like a Shazam movie, like Shazam 3 or something, and then eventually gets to Superman? Or what if even, okay, Rock, I get it. You're such a huge actor. Let's build the entire DC universe around you being the antagonist. Let's make you actually evil, and we have to get a whole gang of heroes together just to fight you. But that's not the direction that they're going. He's going to fight Superman in a fight for, I don't know, like maybe like 15 minutes, and then they're going to put their differences aside and then go punch Brainiac or something. That's how it's going to go. They're not actually going to like fight to the death.
So here's the thing. Henry Cavill actually doesn't have a contract. He was only paid for this cameo because they originally filmed it and did the Shazam version of it where he had no head. They just had a body and no actor. So they literally added Henry Cavill in like a month ago, which, probably a smart thing. But like they have no commitment. Like it's a tease that may never actually follow through, which I think is even worse. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe don't replace Superman with Shazam, but maybe there's a second post-credit scene where it's not with Black Adam. Shazam and the Wizard are like, oh, we have to solve this kind of thing, like who the hell is this kind of thing, or because you see that missing scene at that in the Shazam movie. That's like, who was this person? Like, we don't talk about that person, and it was Black Adam. Like literally, like they could totally have done another scene, not with The Rock, but like just to tie it to the DC universe at large, because Shazam is the next movie coming out, right? Like that is literally the next DC movie, is Shazam 2. So huge, I think just a huge missed opportunity for DC in general, right? We've talked about how they introduced the Justice Society and killed them off without, letting us know who they are. They keep, doing this stuff without any connection. And here was a great opportunity. And, maybe they didn't squander it on Henry Cavill, but they could have added a little bit more just to make it that much more like, oh, yeah, this is going to have repercussions other than maybe Henry Cavill coming back at the moment. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I will be
your disappointment. I can feel it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I think I would have swallowed the pill of this movie better if the whole state of Warner Brothers was just more shore up, right? If I just had a better idea of what was kind of coming down the pipeline and where everything was going. But, I just go into all of these DC movies just feeling like I'm like on two shaky bricks. So like stand up on these two like wobbly poles while trying to watch this movie, where at least when I watch a Marvel movie, I feel like I'm in like a recliner of concrete that's like not going anywhere. It also doesn't help that I finally got to see the trailer for Creed 3 in front of this film, and I got to see like how massive and a talent that Jonathan Majors is, and it's like, oh yeah, they're building the entire next phase of Marvel around this one actor. Like I would watch, I would pick Jonathan Majors every single time on the big screen over The Rock. And I say that because they seem to be occupying just a similar space in my head at the given kind of present moment. They're kind of these bigger, larger than life. Like I thought maybe more antagonistic characters in these two superhero universes, but it seems like The Rock is really pivoting very quickly away from. It seems like he's just going to be a hero that's maybe a little bit more okay with like killing people, whereas like that's really not what a villain is. So I don't know, man. It's just there's people out there that I'm sure are just like, you're picking apart this movie too much. I thought it was fun. I was able to turn my brain off. I didn't really think the action scenes were all that exciting either, right? Like I don't think Black Adam's power set is all that interesting. I mean, I think one shot that I liked how he kind of did like the Western showdown with his like lightning bolt gun. I thought that was fun, but when you look at it in context, it makes no sense. I know this man is so fast, time essentially freezes around him. So essentially what he's doing is he's just having fun. He's being playful and almost like flexing and showing off that he can shoot people with lightning, even though he was always going to beat those people no matter what. But he just doesn't have that personality through the film to where that's funny at all, right? I'm not getting anything out of it. So yeah, just a weird juxtaposition of like you said, we've seen all of the parts of this movie in other more successful films. We've seen better performances out of better people in other films. The set pieces we've seen other places.
Yeah.
Oh man, I just can't take anything from this.
The story, I think, is, if it was better, I think we'd be having a different conversation, right? I think you can have all these same parts, but like, it needs to be a smarter movie, or at least a little bit, I would say maybe leaner, right, in terms of what it's doing and how it's doing this. The JSA as a whole, what did the Cyclone and Atom Smasher lady do that you couldn't have just done with Hawkman and Dr. Fate, right? Like did you need 4 when you could have had 2 and given them more time to breathe and interact? So I think it was a leaner movie that had more direct focus and didn't wander back and forth trying to borrow stuff from other things. I think it would have been we'd have a much different conversation. But overall, I think that's where we're gonna pick it apart a little bit more than probably anything else. But I would say, as much as I hate to admit it, I did like the slow motion stuff because he did actually kill those people, right? Like, he put a grenade in someone's mouth, like in slow motion, and then they actually went back and played it, rather than like when Quicksilver did it, he like saved everybody, right? Like, he didn't really do anything with them, he just kind of knocked them down. But I was like, oh, that's actually fun to see him actually take the missiles and the bullets and everything and put them right back at the people, which I thought was, that's different. It's a little more brutal, but at the end of the day, I can't recommend this to go to the theaters to see it.
Yeah, no, I think, Chris, I think it worked out well in your favor, where your weekend was just too stacked and you just had to watch it any way you could.
Yeah.
So we could talk about it today, and I'll be the first to back Chris up that he was very tied down. It was just trying to fit it in wherever he could so we could talk about it. And it's the same. If you have HBO Max, I'm sure this will be there in about 45 days. Watch it there, because it's, if you have that subscription, it's not really costing you anymore. But don't waste your time.
Maybe if I was in a theater with a couple drinks, if I was like 2 drinks deep into this movie, I might have a good time, but that'd be about it. But all right, well, Mike, we got a regular show that we're going to go do, regular podcast episode with the news. So let's go ahead and get off of here. But if people want to know more about what you're doing, what you're up to, where can they find you at?
Oh, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to catch up with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Valdan, Valdan, or Instagram, Valdan87. If people want to know about our regularly scheduled news podcast that we've been doing for 400 episodes in 2 weeks, where can they find all that good stuff at?
Oh, head on over to Superhero Slate. .com. That is the place where we hide all of our supervillains underwater, and then also inside of pods that are encased in water. And if you look around, you might see some cameos, like, oh, that pod's a little bit bigger than some of the other pods, so I think there's a big villain in there or something like that. But we have all of those various size pods over at superheroslate.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to fine podcasts. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. What did you think about Black Adam? I won't be surprised if you like it, and I won't think of you differently if you liked it. That is okay. But what did you think about it? Let us know. And we love our super fans. So if you want to be a super fan of Superhero Slate, all you have to do is just share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week. And that promise is true because, like Chris said, we have done this for nearly 400 weeks straight. Wow, that's crazy to say out loud. I don't know why it didn't seem as crazy at 300, but it seems very crazy at 400.
We're almost professionals at this point. I wouldn't go so far as to call us that, but we're almost professionals.
Yeah, so stay tuned, stay subscribed, and Chris, let's go talk about the news.
That's right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.